Hello, welcome to another edition of Inside the News, where we talk about the stories that our readers are talking about. And the one that has been getting an awful lot of attention lately, with cause, is what's been happening in the Diocese of Buffalo. Generally speaking, a downsizing. The church has been going through this process for a while, and parishioners, the diocese found out this week which churches were no longer going to exist. And joining us today is Jay Tokasz, a longtime reporter at the Buffalo News, who's been covering the diocese and has been covering this story since it really began to unfold. Well, really this summer, but it's been going on for a couple of years. Jay, as I said, this week we found out which churches were going to close. We've seen a lot of the reaction, which was expected. I guess my first question to you is there anything about this process that, as it played out, was surprising to you?
Not really. I think some of the um, changes that were made in the final list of churches that will close, it was maybe more churches are slated to be remaining open than maybe we first thought, based on the initial recommendations that the diocese put out over a couple of weeks in June, when there was a pretty massive pruning of about 89 churches that were slated to close. Now that number has been reduced. The diocese's count is between 70 and 78. So, a good 10 to 15 churches that were initially slated are now going to remain open, albeit for the most part they will be what are considered secondary worship sites, which means that they're not going to function as a parish any longer, and that is a significant change. So while the building will remain and be used at least to some degree, it will not be as active a site as currently.
Jay, one of the stories that you wrote while this process was going on was trying to address, I guess, what was expected, a lot of rumors, a lot of theories about why the diocese was choosing certain parishes. But as you wrote, this really was a numbers game, wasn't it?
Absolutely. In the end, that's what it is. And I mean, which parishes got chosen over which other parishes. I mean, there's a lot of different variables that were considered, but I think in the end, the biggest variable is the number of priests that the diocese will have available to do masses and other sacraments at all of these churches. So right now you're looking at a diocese that has, I think, on the order of 115 active priests. These are non-retired priests.
Right.
By 2030, that's 6 years from now, they expect to have 70. Now, you can maybe staff more than 120 or 115 places with 115 priests, if they go to multiple places. But I don't know how they would be able to get around to 120 or more with just 70 priests. And on top of that, 2040, the projection is 38 priests. So that numbers game alone will tell you that the diocese had to do something with just the sheer volume of its properties.
And of course, it isn't just that the number of priests is going down, which has been well documented. It's not like most church buildings on Sunday and Saturday afternoon are bursting at the seams with congregants either. The number of people who are practicing is also dropping.
Oh, yes, dramatically. And this is not simply a Catholic phenomena. This is a almost nationwide um, retrenchment from organized religion. It's Pew Center for Religion has documented this for years. I was writing about the rise of what are known as the nuns, not Catholic nuns, but NONS nuns, people who do not affiliate with any religion, yet are somewhat spiritual, if you will. I was writing about that phenomenon 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
It's only intensified, and people are just retrenching more and more from organized religion. And, it's sort of following the phenomenon that played out in, Western Europe, going back, a few decades. So you see U.S. trend that way. And, the most organized of all religions is probably the Catholic Church. So
Right.
It's not really a surprise.
And the other number, of course, in Western New York, there's no denying that the number of people living here, the number of people living in northeastern cities and midwestern cities like Buffalo is dropping. And so you have all of these factors coming together, and what you're left with then is what we're experiencing right now. But on that topic, Jay, one of the things that Buffalo is most known for, not only in the church, but in the community generally, is the architecture here, the historic buildings, the structures that are also very much a part of the community and that people hate to lose. What will become of those buildings is somewhat complicated as a result of this process. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Particularly in the city of Buffalo, where you have the large, ornate churches, the city is still struggling with the legacy of church closures from 30 years ago,
right?
When the diocese had a round of closures of Catholic churches in the city. Some of those churches were huge landmark places, very interesting architecture, and they've never been reused or adapted in any real form that was successful, and so they've kind of deteriorated, at least some of them. What is different though now is that 30 years later, the environment in the city of Buffalo for reusing properties is much better. And so, it remains to be seen what's going to happen with many of these landmark churches, but at least there's a little bit better economics in the city, or some sort of reuse, or potentially another religious use. And I will say this: while there are many potential landmark churches in Buffalo that are slated to close, the diocese seems to have taken pains to keep open some of the most exquisite places. We're talking about St. Louis, Blessed Trinity, St. Casimir. These are all very large, very ornate churches with that really will deserve to be preserved, and they're remaining open, with small congregations,
Right.
And they're under a sort of watch list that the diocese is assigned to some other churches as well. But I think that there was a certain sensitivity to that, but how long they can hold out with that is an open question.
Right. And I'm sure will be a numbers game in the future that we'll be looking at. Jay, last question that, not surprisingly, given the unhappiness among a lot of parishioners and members of the diocese about individual churches closing. Some people are looking to appeal these decisions and going to, and no pun intended, a higher power, going to the Vatican and seeing if they can convince the church leadership at that level to reverse this decision. How long will that process take? And, in your opinion, or maybe from what you've seen, how likely is it that that might have any success?
Well, the process is interesting because it can't actually start until Bishop Fisher issues an actual decree closing a church or merging a parish. So, in other words, he has to sort of formally write this decree, and that goes, all the way to the Vatican. And within 10 days of that decree, any appeal needs to be made. So, and if the appeal is made, and it's sort of a very technical legal process, and parishioners would be probably advised to have a canon lawyer do it. Otherwise, it could be sort of dismissed, on technical grounds.
Yeah.
But anyway, if a appeal is made, the Vatican, it goes to one of the Vatican bodies. I'm not sure which one it is at this point, but and they'll consider it. And during that consideration, the church can't be closed, or a merger can't be consummated. I don't know how long it would take. I mean, the Vatican moves slowly on some things, swiftly on others.
Yeah,
it could be a while. There is some precedence in other dioceses where appeals have been somewhat successful, or at least they've forestalled a closing, where maybe in the end, closing happened anyway.
This, as I said at the start, this is a process that's been going on for a long time. And as you said at the beginning, the numbers suggest that it's not going to end, that this will not be the last time we hear about churches closing in the diocese. But it is maybe a sign of the times for a lot of reasons. And I'll just say, as somebody who works with you, Jay, thank you for your coverage on this. We know how important it is to the community. And as much as we'd like to move on from this, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more to say about it in coming weeks and months. So, Jay, thanks so much for talking about that today. I appreciate your time, and we'll be looking to read more from you soon.
You're welcome, Bruce. Thank you.